Hello Rebrand gang, and welcome to another episode of Rebrand Everything. Today we're going to be creating 5 new logo options for Christian Louboutin, the designer shoe company, and we're going to have a poll at the end so you can vote for your favourite. Let's go! So Christian Louboutin is a pretty popular designer clothes label at the moment, predominantly doing shoes, but they also do handbags and trainers and other stuff like that. It's pretty popular in like modern culture. You can often hear people in songs and in videos talking about red bottoms, and that's what they're referring to because the soles of all of their shoes are like bright red. It's just like their thing. And I looked up why they actually do that, and it says it's because red symbolises love, blood and passion. And I think basically it started out that he just painted the bottom of a pair of shoes red so that they stood out, and it just went from there. The Louboutin logo currently looks like this, and their website looks like this. The website looks really good, but if you weren't already aware of the brand, you might say that the logo is a little bit uncomfortable looking. With the wild scripty font, and the top of the L also forms the C for the word Christian. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I feel like if I made this logo today and no one had ever seen it before and I uploaded it to Instagram and asked for feedback, I feel like I'd get shredded with people saying it's not clean enough, it's hard to read, it won't scale down very well. Trying to make the L the C for the word Christian as well is just making it very confusing. So that's why today I want to look at creating some new options for that and see if we can create something simpler, easier to read and more scalable. So for the sketching stage, I had a pretty clear vision for a few ideas, and they were the first things that come to my head when I was like looking around the website and just generally doing my research. All of them were pretty much based on simplifying the logo and making it more modern, more clear, more legible and definitely more scalable. I like the idea of using the red soul icon that I'd seen on their website alongside a nice word mark somehow. But at this point I wasn't sure what font style I thought that would work with best. All I knew is that I wanted to create a few options that were modern and on trend, and then a few that retain some of that traditional and more established feel. I didn't spend ages and ages sketching on this one, partly because I ran out of time, but also partly because I really thought that the first few options that I drew out could work, so I decided to get into Illustrator quite early. If you like this video so far, please remember to press like on it as it will really help the channel out. If you've got Instagram, follow Rebrand Everything, and I post weird story stuff, little clips on there of like the design process and all stuff like that. And if you like videos like this on YouTube every single week, press subscribe and put the little bell on to make sure you get a notification. So jumping into Illustrator, I wanted to start option 1 by following the path of kind of the obvious and on-trend choice, which is kind of following in the footsteps of many of the other big fashion designer brands. This basically means using all caps, big, bold, sans serif font, pay careful attention to the kerning and pretty much just keeping it black. I wanted to add his first name on top of the word Louboutin, and then have the established date beneath, as I feel like adding the date that it was founded beneath kind of gives it that extra clout because it's over like 20 something years or maybe nearly 30 years. I just feel like that gives it that clout, like it's not just some random startup, this is the real deal. We've been around for a while. Where I wanted to make the words above and below smaller, it's very easy to kill the scalability of the logo at this point, so I don't normally like to go down to less than 1/3 of the size of the bigger type. I found that's a pretty good rule to avoid the text becoming too small when the logo is at a small size, say on a mobile website or maybe a clothes tag in this example. As I wanted this logo to be following current trends but didn't want to make it too boring, I decided to add an element of the red to tie in with the fact that this brand is known for the red soles on the shoes. So I started looking at how I could incorporate some red at the bottom of the text while keeping it all readable and eye-pleasing. So as I said before, I'd noticed on the website that they had this little secondary logo which was the red soul icon. And I redrew this just by doing one line and then using the width tool, which is basically a way that you can adjust the stroke width really easily. So now that I have my red soul icon, I thought it might be quite cool to try and introduce this into the text. I'm aware that it can be quite a dangerous move to make one of the letters an icon, as it can really mess up the readability of the wording, but as the shape of this red soul icon kind of looked like an eye anyway, I thought I'd get away with trying it. Once I was happy with the general word mark, I wanted to somehow add in the name Christian above it, or to the side of it. I kind of like the look of it in the red box, but rotating the name 90 degrees and running it up the side of the L meant that the text looked too small. So in the same way that I mentioned earlier, the small text was now probably only about 10% of the size of the large text, which means you're going to have problems as soon as you start scaling that down. So because of that, I ended up playing around with another idea, which was just carefully aligning the text, which seemed to make a strong logo while still being a little bit offbeat and interesting. Also, I kind of had an idea that the way the two letters touched here, it made sort of a checker pattern that I could perhaps somehow develop across the rest of the branding. With like a red square there, then black square. Just thought that might be a nice pattern that maybe we could use in the background of the website or just in subtle little places. I wanted option 3 to retain some of the recognition of the previous logo whilst being a lot simpler and more easy to read. I took the L from the old logo and I removed all the rest of the letters just with the direct selection tool, and then just deleted that, and then just with the pen tool just filled in the blanks. Then once I'd got that as all one path, I fattened up the lines by adding a stroke, but then this made some of the parts touch that I didn't want to touch. So I adjusted them again using the direct selection tool. And then what I actually did was cut part of that, paste it in place with Apple F, and then use the puppet warp tool, which is quite a cool way of doing it, because it kept that sort of natural curve rather than sometimes when you're trying to fiddle around with each individual path like this, you can get the little ugly lumps and bumps. But with the puppet warp tool, it managed to keep it all nice and smooth, relatively easily and quickly as well. So to match up with the scripty font that I'd got inside our red circle, I wanted to use a more traditional serif font to keep that heritage and sort of character within the logo. After fiddling around trying lots of things, I like the look of the font called Bodoni in all caps. The top line with the word Christian is half the size of the bottom line, and it's just tracked out very widely so both sides of the logo align, so it makes this nice solid block. I then positioned my new icon next to this and then made it about 120% of the height of the text, just so it looked balanced and comfortable. Because that balance, you can't just put a mathematical equation to it, you kind of just have to see what looks right for the exact situation you've got, because things like the thickness of the text and the space in between the text and the lead in between the text and the space between the icon and the text all makes a difference to that balance. So for option 4, I wanted to use a font that had that real vintage French look to make it look like this company is really ingrained into French history. I found this pretty cool font called Upper East Side, and that was on Font Squirrel, which was pretty much exactly what I was looking for. It had them thin lines with the big fat bits, and it just had that, I don't know how to explain it, I don't know what the style's called, but it just looks French. I tried it in upper lower at first and then looked at adjusting some of the ascender heights as I noticed they were really tall and it was kind of just making it look a bit messy, so I cleaned that up by bringing some of them ascenders down. And then I took the red soul icon and added a couple of little spikes to the side of that, just with careful spacing in like the indent in the sole. And I felt like this added a bit of extra power and interest to the logo. And I kind of thought that the spikes are kind of like sharp and maybe defensive and maybe a little bit aggressive, so it kind of looks like they're protecting the Red Soul brand, something like that. I didn't like how spiky the text underneath looked, as it was creating like this ugly optical illusion where it never looked like the icon was dead in the center. So I changed the text to all caps and then thickened it up slightly, as some of them thin lines just looked a little bit lost before I added a stroke to the font. And then also did a little bit of custom adjustments to the font just to make sure it was nice and comfortable to read. Things like bringing the angled part of the N, just making that a little bit more pronounced. I wanted to make option 5 this super confident logo that's actually so confident that they feel like they don't even need to say the full name of their brand. It's kind of saying this brand's so strong and we're so confident in it that we don't even need to say it and you'll know what we mean. I thought that the minimum I could take it to was LBTN, and that was the simplest way of showing the name while still keeping it recognisable, I think. So once I had this laid out in the simplest possible way, I added a red line beneath, which obviously symbolises the red souls again. Just used that super simple line, as I just wanted everything about this to be super plain and super simple. As not showing the name is a bold move, I thought I would add the name small inside a red line, but then the thought behind this is that once the logo is live, it sort of has a backup plan, which is if you don't know what LBTN is, where you can just look a little closer and inside that red bar you see the full name. But then maybe if they did go with that, in a couple of years this new identity will be established enough so that you could remove the name and just keep the LBTN with the red line beneath. So even though I'm saying it's super confident, as of right now, if they actually released it, I guess you would keep in the Christian Louboutin. After that has been developed and established and the general public, like I've seen that maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times, it will be established enough so you can take it out. So it's kind of like building and thinking about the future of the brand as well. So for this option, I drew out the idea that I'd drawn out in the sketchbook, and it actually worked quite nicely, but I still had a few other ideas in my head, so I decided to start getting them down as well. So I spent a little while designing up a few different ideas, just looking at different ways of playing with the LBTN. And I kind of started feeling like I just wasn't really going anywhere, but kind of carried on, playing around with a few different ideas, and I thought, some of these are alright. But then when I actually just looked back at the very first option I did, I just thought it would just look 10 times better than all of the others. So if you know a lot about this brand, you will notice that this whole time when I've been designing these, I've been putting 1963 as the founded date, but that's actually just me not reading it properly, because that was actually when the designer was born. So for these final options that I'm going to show you in a minute, I have changed that because it was actually founded in 1991. So just in case you were thinking, hold on a minute, why is that date changed? That's why, I just didn't read it properly. I'm sorry. So then, Rebrand gang, just before I show you the final options, I just wanted to remind you, as always, vote in the poll by pressing on the little I button in the top right. Add me on Instagram at Rebrand Everything. Like this video if you like this video. If you want videos like this every single week, press subscribe and press the little bell so you get a notification each and every time I upload. So then, Rebrand gang, I've said all that so many times now you're probably sick of hearing it, so let's just see them final options. Let's go.